Hello, my name is Makani Kikahuna, and welcome to the show.
Who's the podcast host that you love the most? Coming to you live from coast to coast. Call me Thunderlip, Spaceman, or G. It's just me being native as I can be.
All right, so this is the very, very first in-person recording of this podcast. Let me rephrase that. This is the very first in-person recording in this brand new studio setup. Because I did record with my cousin once, both of us huddled over an iPhone in my backyard with planes flying overhead. Doesn't really count. So I'm here with Shelise. She's my very first guest. I'm very excited. Shelise is a transracial international adoptee, right, from Korea. I remember one time being on a panel, or maybe we were doing a pre-panel for Adoption Mosaic, and I think you were talking, kind of maybe sharing your story, and I jumped in and was like, well, you know, I was in the army in South Korea, and it was like, I was like, okay, well, I guess they didn't need to throw in that detail, but I was trying to be, relatable.
Yeah.
But so, anyways, thanks for coming out to my house, and
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, good. All right, so why don't you just start by just telling us about yourself? I mean, what you do, your home life, kids, what have you, whatever you're comfortable sharing, so we get a little bit of an overview, and then we'll dive right in.
Sure. My name is Shelise Gieseke. I am a transnational South Korean interracial adoptee. I was adopted as an infant through an adoption agency, and I was raised on a farm in a white family with by my parents and 3 siblings, an older brother, an older sister, and a younger brother, and they are all my parents' biological children. And I grew up in a small farming town, very white. Then I currently live in Portland, Oregon, with my husband, who is also white, and we have 2 kids biological to us. They identify as multiracial. My daughter is 12 and my son is 9.
So you had 3 biological siblings?
Yes, biological to my parents. I'm the only adopted person.
Right.
And I grew up in a really large extended family, and that I'm aware of, I'm the only adopted person.
What did they tell you about your adoption?
The story, how I understand it, like from my parents, as far as like what motivated them to adopt, was very sort of this Christian-based idea of like kind of Good Samaritan, like helping the widows and orphans idea. And I guess it was my dad's idea. My dad was in the Navy, and he did a lot of traveling, and I think maybe he got the idea while he was traveling, and just really what I remember them telling me a lot is they just thought it was adopting a child was something good they could do to help people, like help, my birth mom and help me. But so from a very like generous, like Good Samaritan.
Or to seem like their heart was in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what order are you in the siblings?
So I'm 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4.
My older brother and sister, there's 2 years between them. Then there's 5 years between my sister and I, and my younger brother is 2 years younger than I am. So we're kind of like in 2 sets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what kind of representation, Korean or Asian, do you remember seeing as a kid? And how did that sort of shape how you behaved as a kid, or did it?
I think, like, in my everyday life, very little representation. Like, all the people that I went to school with, especially in elementary school, they were all white. Until I was maybe in like 4th and 5th grade. There was a like migrant worker family, Latino, and their kids came to our school. But other than that, they were the only non-white people I knew growing up. And maybe like at a church, there was a few. There was another family who was of Asian descent. But they were doctors, and my parents are farmers, and so it's like there wasn't a lot of like mixing with them. But like I watched normal network TV, so like the white family sitcoms. I loved wrestling when I was a kid growing up. And yeah, so for my day to day, not a lot. I read a lot. But I read kind of your white standards sort of stuff. And then if I was really interested in trying to know something about Korea, like, maybe I would get some books from the library or something like that. But not a lot of, turning on the TV or opening up a magazine and seeing people that look like you.
Yeah. She brings up the wrestling thing in case you've not listened to me or seen my Instagrams or whatnot. Wrestling is a big part of how I grew up, and also now how my 6, soon-to-be 7-year-old son, Che, is growing up. All he wants to do is wrestle. And I've got bruises and bloody noses to show that. So where did you say you grew up again?
I grew up in a town called Newell, Minnesota. So population approximately 13,000 people.
Okay. Okay, so probably going to jump ahead a little bit. So at some point, you decided that you wanted to try and locate some birth family in Korea. How old were you when you even started thinking of that as an idea, something you could do?
I think, I'm not sure when I first thought of it. Maybe even when I was a kid. I do remember having like moments where, I was mad at my mom and thinking like, oh, if I was in Korea with my Korean mom, she wouldn't make me do this. I wouldn't have to clean my room or whatever.
Right.
But I don't really think I thought about it consciously until I was in my mid to late 20s.
Okay.
And I think, going back a little bit to the representation thing, I think a lot of it, because of my experience as adopted person, like I was really trying to fit in as best I could, just being so physically different and just, obvious. Could feel really challenging. And so like the more interests and, values of the culture that I could express and reflect was important to me. And so I was, I think kind of holding this dual idea of like, this is something about myself I would really like to know and connect with, and like this is what I really need to be doing to stay connected and relevant like in my everyday life. And so like the connecting with Korean culture kind of took a back seat while I was just trying to be like a farm kid from Minnesota.
Yeah.
And and I think, for example, I went when I was in, I think, like the summer after 4th grade, I went to a Korean culture camp because actually Minnesota has a really large number of Korean adopted people. So there were more opportunities for like culture camps and stuff like that. But they were more in the like Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and I was like living out in rural Minnesota. So I did go to one like Korean culture camp, which I really liked, and I had fun. And then the next year, instead of going back to that, I went to a summer camp for like farm kids. And I ended up going to that camp until I was graduated from high school. But I think it's just a good reflection of like that camp that just really reflected the experience I was having, like living in my family. And it felt like more safe and familiar. And like, if I was biologically born to my family, that's what I would be doing.
The farm camp felt more familiar.
Yeah, it just felt like the more obvious choice. And so and then when I probably when around 26, 27, about the time I was getting married, So like a big transition in my life, even though I had been with my husband and I had been dating for 7 years before that. But a lot of times for adopted people, like any major life transitions can really have the potential to stir up a lot of those maybe shelved or kind of pushed back or compartmentalized feelings about the adoption experience. And so I think that and that was and I also had started therapy for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so I think a mix of all of that really got me thinking about who I was, who I wanted to be, like what did I need to know to feel like I could figure out who I was. And so I ended up applying, and actually at the same time, that was also a time where I was connected with Adoption Mosaic, which is a Portland-based organization that provides community and education for members of the adoption constellation. And that really had me thinking more about my adopted person identity and experience, and then also living in Portland and previously coming from Minneapolis, and just living in a more diverse environment, got me thinking about what's my place here. I can't really, I don't have to act white or be white, and I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do if I'm not doing that. And so all of those things kind of got thrown in the mixing bowl, and one of the results was I was oh, I think I'm going to try to find my Korean family. And so I was able to go to Korea along with my husband as a part of a program for Korean people, adopted people who were interested, who had never been to Korea and were interested in finding their birth families. That was organized by a group called Goal it was created by Korean adoptees in Korea to help other Korean adoptees who were coming to Korea. So we were there for 2 weeks and maybe 10 days, and part of that was visiting the orphanage that you were a part of and looking at your file from the adoption agency. And then I was also on a TV show.
Oh, okay. So growing up in Minnesota, feeling more comfortable at the farm camp, and part of the reason I started this way back in the day was growing up as a mixed kid in a small town, and I'm not adopted, but my mom is white, my sisters are white. That's mainly who I grew up with. Mm-hmm. And I would spend summer breaks and things like that with my dad, and that would be my exposure to my native side. Mm-hmm. And I would have a lot of this maybe anxiety a little bit, but just being around other natives, and I kind of felt out of place.
And kind of imposter.
Big time, yeah. And I felt like these guys are authentic, and I may look the part, but I don't really know what to say or do. And so there were times, and I'll speak for myself and then ask you, there were definitely times, especially when I would go home, wishing I was just white and not mixed, because the town itself was pretty redneck, and there wasn't any burning crosses in my yard, but there was definitely a lot of microaggressions. I don't know if that's from
vibe.
Yeah, and it was from teachers and mostly adults, really. Some from the kids, but mainly adults. Just they treated me a little different, and I didn't recognize it for what it was then. So did you have anything like that when you were coming up in this smallish town in Minnesota? Would it be easier if I just wasn't Korean and something like that?
For sure. And I think that having siblings who were white, really, it was, I think being adopted in general, the experience lends itself to people feeling insecure in their family anyway, and just having experienced the trauma of mother loss at a young age. And so I think it's just I remember being, especially in middle school, I remember thinking I'm pretty sure more boys would like me if I was just white. Because, it's like, I like the same things. We're like from the same place. And if I didn't look this way, it would be easier for me. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely, had a lot of times where I was like, this would be a lot easier if I was white.
And by the way, probably would be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Because I also, one of, kind of a milestone for many teenage girls in my hometown was to, run for the town, the Miss New Ulm pageant or whatever. And I did it because it was, that's what girls your age did.
Yeah.
But also just knowing, there's just no way I'm going to win. Right. This town is, hailed for its, German heritage. And, I'm like, there's just no way they're going to pick me.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. So I was just wondering how you felt about that. And, and I love my mom to death, and she did her best. There was never she wanted me to be proud of my Native heritage, but she does not know how to instill that in me. And, even though her and my dad had their stuff, she never kept me from him to keep me from knowing that side of the family or learning about it. And so, that was wild though. And a lot of stuff, just looking back, I didn't see a lot of it for what it was then, but looking back, oh boy, that was.
I think one of the downsides of being raised by white people is that if they are people who aren't critical thinkers about, the systems and institutions that make up the world around us, that they can't alert us or educate us about those things that could be potentially harmful to us.
Yeah. And one thing my mom actually said, and my sister said this too, after they went back and listened to my first kind of round of these was, I never even thought of that. I never even thought about what that was like for you in that town. I was like, yeah, dude, it's real stuff, but I don't also blame them for not.
How are they, how would they know?
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I just wanted to circle back to that because I'm sure we had similar experiences there. Okay. So you went to find your birth family. What other kind of expectations did you have when you traveled to South Korea?
I had a lot of anxiety building up to that trip. I was really nervous. A lot of fear of being called out as an imposter or somebody who doesn't belong. And I didn't speak the language at all, very, very little. And at the time, that was before the really big K wave of music and dramas and stuff. And it was just starting to be popular in the U.S. And so I really wasn't plugged into that either. And I think I just didn't know what to expect. I had read a lot of other people's experiences about traveling back, and I think my biggest fear was just getting there and not feeling like I belong there.
Yeah.
I could be
your
there.
husband was with you?
Yes, luckily he was with me. Yeah.
Kids were not?
But this was pre-kids.
Pre-kids,
yeah,
okay. That's handy.
Yeah.
And obviously he was supportive in all this. Did he ever have any, are you sure this is what you want to do kind of thing? Or was he, this is what you want to do, you want to find him, let's go find him?
Yeah, he was very supportive. And he's been a really strong ally and just really open and understanding. And I think sometimes caring more about some of these issues than I had the capacity for at times. So really good at carrying some of that. But yeah, he was really excited to be a part of it. And I'm just really grateful that he could be a part of it, because I don't think there was any way I was going to go and come back and be able to just relay what this experience meant to me. So to have him there and to be witness was really powerful and really important. And I think it really, I think it just helped him know more things about me. And also, we didn't have kids, but we were planning on having kids. And so I think too, like him having the ability to experience like that part of my culture of origin for himself was really a cool opportunity.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
So do you remember what was it like just stepping off that plane? Like that first initial moment or two, like did it feel like home? Did it feel just like I'm in a foreign country? Like what was that like?
Well, the things I remember getting off the plane where like my face was so oily from the plane ride. That's like a distinct memory. I'm like, what is happening? But really, like once we got outside, like we stepped outside the airport, I had this experience, and I describe it of like I like felt my like bones settle. Like I was like my body was just like connected to the earth there, and like it was like a kind of like this spiritual sigh. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, like this is a place for me. And I hadn't expected that, but I really did. I mean, I have a conscious memory of feeling just like all of a sudden like settled into.
Yeah, that's so killer.
Yeah.
That sounds really. I get a small bit of that when I go to Klamath Falls, even where my tribe is from, even though I've never lived there.
Yeah.
But I get down there and there's just a little bit of like, yeah, this feels kind of good. This feels kind of comfortable. And I think I'm always talking about the ancestors.
Yes, I think that totally. Now that I like more have more awareness of the idea of like connecting with your ancestors, I think it's kind of a thing, right? It's like it's like plugging in the cord that's the line to that.
Yeah. There's a welcome home moment from the ancestors.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Dude. I like how you put that too. The bones settling.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the search and what kind of things you bumped into there, because you didn't ultimately end up finding them, correct?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So tell us a little bit about that.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. I mean, I think the way that through this program, it was the perfect way for me to approach this process because it was all thought out by other people. And, I really just had to show up and like say yes or no, or fill out these forms, or, be at this place at a certain time. And that like, it took all the logistical stress out of it, which was really good for me. And it was just like somebody was thinking, there was interpreters and how to get to and from. And so part of the process was so in Korea at the time, I was adopted in the late 70s, early 80s. There was 4 major Korean agencies that worked with agencies in the United States. And so I went to my Korean agency, which was Eastern Social Welfare Services. I think that's what it was called. And so they have a building, and we all went. There was a group of us from who were adopted through that agency, and we like just sat around in this room. And then some people would, I think the adoption agency director, like we had lunch together, and then we just sat around in this room and waited for a social worker, and they just took us to another room where they showed us whatever paperwork they had available. But you weren't allowed to get a copy, and you weren't allowed to take pictures or anything. They just kind of went through it with you. And from what I know, the experience, like reviewing your file, varies quite a bit depending on who's helping you.
Yeah.
And so I had the person who was helping us, she seemed newer and younger, and she was very kind and it seemed like pretty forthright about answering any questions that we had. And so one of the things that I had discovered, so like in the American paperwork that my parents have and that I now have, it said that my Korean mother came to the hospital to give birth, and she didn't say who my father was, and she just requested that I be put up for adoption.
Yeah.
And then she left. And then when I was going through the file, they had what I understand to be the original intake file from the hospital. And so and it also said that she wasn't married and was 23 years old. And then that original intake form said that she was 33 years old. I don't think it said if she was married or not, but it did list my Korean father's name and his age, and he was like 35. And it kind of took me by surprise because, my American paperwork says he's unknown. And so in my mind, I just assumed I would just never know who he was.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay. So all of a sudden, to me, that changed it just changed the potential narrative so much, because there's a big difference between being 23 and single and 33.
Right.
You're just in a different stage of life usually. Right. And then also having the name of my Korean father too. That was that really surprised me.
Do you think that was clerical, or was there something? And you'd never seen this paperwork before, right?
Right. I have theories about it. I mean, I think, and you'll find this among Chinese adoptees as well, is that there's kind of this canned story that many families have gotten. One, because I think it makes the paperwork faster, and no one knows if you're being dishonest, and it's just a story that's really easy to sell.
Yeah.
And so I think that, it's single unwed mother, check.
Right.
And so, and I think too, right, the less information you have, and especially the less accurate information you have, the more likely it is you're never going to locate, or maybe you'll be less likely and compelled to come back and try to find people.
Yeah. And if you're a nice couple in Minnesota and you see a single mom who's in her early 20s, then
totally feeds into that narrative,
really
we're helping everyone's winning in this situation.
So I don't know if this is related, but I mean, you would probably be able to say, I don't know. So my favorite wrestler is Ric Flair. Ric Flair was adopted.
Yeah.
And
from Minnesota.
And that's why I brought this up. Is there something happening in Minnesota with adoption that is, a little shady? His whole adoption, as he tells it, was 100% shady.
Especially at the time that he was adopted.
Right. Yeah, which would have been early or late 40s, I think.
Yeah.
But
so I mean,
that's a big jump.
The history of adoption in the United States is it starts pretty nefariously, especially private closed adoptions. There's this woman called Georgia Tan. She was a social worker in the South, and she is the one who essentially set up this sort of rich families buy babies. She sources babies from poor single women or poor women, and she sells them to financially resourced couples who want children. And there's a lot of true crime podcasts about her, because she was a very shady woman.
Yeah.
So and also just the history of orphan trains in the United States. But in Minnesota, I think much like it is here in Oregon, there was some really large adoption agencies that were running in Minnesota. One was called Lutheran Social Services, and the other was called Children's Home Society. And they were just really large organizations that were based in Minnesota, and they generated a lot of international and domestic adoption. But also too, I think just part of it in Minnesota is the history of removal and how often and easily that happened. And then, at the time of Ric Flair, when he was born, there's a whole era called the baby scoop era, and for domestic women who were, lied to, told their babies died, or they were sent away to have babies. There's a great book and documentary called The Girls Who Went Away about those kind of unwed mothers' homes. And but Minnesota, because of these large agencies that were working there, has a very long and storied and very large amount of domestic and international adoptees.
My oldest brother, my mom relinquished him, and she spent some time right here in Portland in a home for unwed mothers.
Okay.
And the way she described it, man, it does not sounds rough. I mean, I had her. This was one of the cool things about the first round. I had her on as a guest, and I learned more about her in that hour than I did in 38
time
years
together.
Whatever.
Yeah.
She told me that she was in this home and he was born, but then she spent like a week or 10 days or something with him.
Oh,
and
really?
was like, and then one day she took a nap or whatever and woke up and she was.
Oh, no.
And I had no idea about any of that.
Wow.
So Bill, my older brother Bill, and I've met him a couple times, but so I was just like, even the name, just the home for unwed mothers, just sounds so harsh and cold and
yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
So you're sitting in there with the social workers and the paperwork. What are the next steps after that?
After that, I decided to participate. And one of the things that the agencies do is if they do have any information for your parents listed in the file, they'll send a telegram to the last known address. But I don't think anyone responded to the telegrams that were sent out. And then one of the things that was very memorable when we were at the agency, there was a man who was participating in the program, and his wife was also a Korean adoptee, and she was just along. She came along to go to Korea, but she wasn't interested in finding her family. But they were like, well, since, we might as well just look into it. And they found her family.
Wow.
And when we were there, we were walking through the halls, and she was meeting her family, and all of a sudden we were walking and we just heard this bone chilling, keening wail. And it was her mom, seeing her for the first time. And it was just this unearthly, a sound I've never heard before in my life. But everyone was just stopped and was just it was just so full of so much raw emotion. And also just seeing them together was so obvious that that was her family. They all looked so much alike. And so after the agency, then we went to do this TV show where they, their thing is connecting people who have been separated, especially in Korea, during wartime or in some other way. And they had a segment that was just for this, our cohort of Korean adopted people who are looking for their parents. And so they highlighted some people, and everyone went on the show and introduced themselves. And then as part of the pre-show interview, they asked you to fill out this form and write a letter to your parents. And so when we got to the studio, one of the producer people was like, we want you to read the letter that you wrote to your parents. And I was like, okay. And I did not write that expecting to share that with anyone else.
Yeah.
So I was a little caught off guard, and I remember my husband walked in and he looked at me. He's like, "What's going on?" Because I was just what? So I read the letter on air.
Yeah.
And then they have this little paid group of ladies who are the studio audience, and all crying. And so that was really crazy. The funny thing is, one of the funny memories from that taping was that the producers were like, they had the list of all the people participating, and they kept calling people by their Korean names,
Yeah.
but nobody there was ever called their Korean name, and so like they're calling up these names, and no one's answering them because they're really looking for Jenny.
Right. Oh, how funny! I never heard that.
So that was really funny. Because I remember standing next to this guy, he kept yelling this name, and I'm like, you got to use their English name.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh.
Right. You think they would have that dialed in if they're making that show every week? Oh, wow.
Yeah, the funny thing that I found about Koreans, like native Koreans or people who lived in Korea or were raised by Koreans, is that they're not very adoption literate.
Yeah.
But still very much kind of like secrets and lies drama kind of ideas.
Yeah.
But you would think for a nation that is just rife with adoption, more people would be a little more savvy about it, but not really.
Yeah. That's interesting too. And it wasn't until meeting Laura, who, my girlfriend and partner, even though I have an adopted little brother and an older brother who was relinquished, I was very unsavvy about it as well. Yeah. And I remember one of the early discussions I had with her is finding out one of my coworkers was adopted and asking him about, reunion, and he wasn't interested in it. And so my thought was like, oh, well, he's not interested. I guess that's that. And then it was on talking to her. We're like, well, that's part of his story. That's part of who he is. Don't you think he should know that story? And it just totally changed my, and I got more and more as we went along and did a couple panels for Adoption Mosaic and whatnot. And, but I think there's a good portion of, at least a lot of people I know, it's not something people think about a lot, especially if it's not in their line of sight or their family.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so let's see. So you, so how are you feeling about this process so far? Were you feeling optimistic?
I felt hopeful, but also because at the time I was working for Adoption Mosaic and really just learning more about kind of the institution, like the adoption industrial complex, as they say, and just knowing more about like how the statistics and how likely it is to find your birth family. Even though I feel like anecdotally, it feels like a lot of people are in reunion, like for Korean adopted people being in reunion, it's only like, it's less than 10% of people who have searched and found members of their family. So I think I was hopeful, but also was trying to stay realistic and just knowing like statistically, it's not really, it's probably not feasible. And I think one of the hardest parts being there was going to the adoption agency facility, and they had babies there, and it's like they're in this nursery, and there's a window and you can view them, and I think that was really hard because it was just so sad. And on one hand, it was really helpful because I really think it like helped me put my own like story into context. Like, oh, that's me. That like that's my beginning. Especially since I didn't know very much about who I was until I got to my American family, and so being able to see in like a glimpse into those 7 to 8 months that I was in Korea, like what that might have looked like, was really helpful. And it was just really sad, just knowing like here are this room full of babies who are embarking on such a challenging and sad journey.
Yeah, one that you've been through, and so you kind of know what's ahead for them. Totally. Mm-hmm. Do you think? I mean, I don't know. There's probably no way you would know this. Do you think the 90% or so don't want to be found? I mean, that's kind of a big question, but did you kind of pick up on any sort of vibes like that when you were there?
Yeah, actually, I mean, there's a lot of, just because of the social culture in Korea, if you were actually a single woman giving birth, and who had relinquished a child, and then maybe you get married later on and have a family. Like, there's many stories I've heard of people who have found their families who are like, I can't tell anyone about you because I have, my husband will divorce me, or my other kids will be really upset, or, and just like a lot of secrecy. And, it generally, Koreans aren't like big talkers,
Right.
so they're not really like, let's, being forthright or transparent about their past or whatever. So I think there is a lot of that, I think. And I know that there was a young man who was a part of my cohort when he was with the social worker reviewing his file. The social worker told him, "Oh, it's probably better if you don't try to find her because you could really mess up her life by revealing yourself." And which is true, and that's actually not his responsibility.
Right.
Like, that I was very offended on his behalf, because I'm like, that's not his. That you shouldn't put that on him. That's not fair.
Yeah.
And he's just a young man trying to find his mom, and who his people are,
himself,
and what the consequence of that is, in my opinion, is not his fault.
Yeah, for sure. Oh man, that seems like the last thing you'd want to say to an adult.
So cruel. I just think so unnecessarily cruel.
Oh man. All right. Okay. So was the plan, if you didn't find your family there before you left, they're still going to stay in contact, or was it? How do I want to put that? I mean, when did you start to get the feeling like this isn't going to happen? And
yeah, I think by the end of the trip, they hadn't heard from any like the telegram things, and and there had been, I think, at least one other person who ended up finding their mom because of the process. And yeah, and so I'm not really sure exactly when, but part of what I wanted for myself at that time is to feel like I had done all of the things I could do in order to find my Korean family. And so, like, going there, being on the TV show, going to the agency, and she was like kind of ready to move on with my own life and think about having kids. And like, I really felt like I had to go through this process, no matter what the outcome was, to kind of move on to the next stage of my life. But I don't know that I really, I'm not really sure. I don't think I really sat down and consciously thought, like, now that this seems like this is the result, how do I feel about that?
Yeah. Okay. So, there wasn't like a big, was there a sense of disappointment when you left?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's like, it's just so much part of the adopted person experience, where it's, the both and. Like, it was really magical and wonderful to witness people be reunited with their families.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. But it was also like really sad and hard to see other people have what you had gone there to do for yourself.
Right.
And so, like, having both of those experiences, feelings about the experience at the same time, I think was challenging. And it was just, and I think after that, like, now in retrospect, I mean, I went to Korea in 2011, so it's been a while. And yeah, like, I can see now, like, when I got back, I was pretty sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what did you do with that grief? How did you?
Well, I'm an avoider.
Yeah.
So I probably watched a lot of TV and read a bunch of books, and didn't talk about it.
Yeah, me too. So what do you think? What do you think changed about you after that experience?
Well, I think I did, like, I definitely came back from that trip with a more like rooted sense of self of like where I was from. Like I think just it's because of I think a lot of because of like racism and white supremacy, like how I thought of or how other people around me thought of and viewed Korea was like wasn't based in any kind of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be there and to see like that it's, you know, the mix of the kind of the really ancient and contemporary, and then it's like a mix of these things, and like that it was a real place.
Yeah.
Was really great for me, and just like that I could think like when I thought of like where I was from, I could think of places I had been and food I had eaten and experiences I had had there. Whereas before I went, you know, it was just like this really nebulous idea of what I thought Korea might be.
Yeah. Korea is amazing because I was there for 2 years when I was in the Army, and which is a little different experience than going there as a civilian because you're largely, you know, controlled in what you do. But, you know, we would take these gigantic Humvees down way out into the country to do training exercises, and there would be, you know, the road would be dirt and it would be just wide enough for the Humvee, and then there would be basically like shacks on one side, but then off up in the hills would be these like amazing like monuments, these intricate like, and I think they were, you know, more or less like funeral mounds of some sort, but they were like so intricate and beautiful, and the countryside is beautiful. And then you go into Seoul and it's like this huge city and it's vibrant and colorful and there's food, you know, and I loved my time in Korea. I mean, if you took the Army part out of it, but I did have a lot of fun there, and I got to experience a lot of it. And I remember getting my orders, you know, and I'm looking at this piece of paper and it said Camp Casey, South Korea, and I was like, South Korea? What the hell is that all about? And the sergeant was like, yeah, you know, we got bases over there. And I'm like, well, didn't the Korean War end like 50 years ago? What's the point of all this? But then I went and had fun, and you know, there's not a lot of people I know that can say they were in South Korea for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love South Korea, and I would like to go back as a civilian and explore, or go back to my old haunts maybe. But
yeah.
Where are we at on that? 47 minutes. Okay. So now that you're back, and I feel like we are like skipping past so much because we're talking about, what'd you say, 2 weeks you were there?
Yeah, 10 days to 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we're brushing past a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But we could certainly go for a long time. But so when you get back, and you're kind of having this grief about it, and then did it feel like there was just unanswered questions, or did it feel like some of your questions were answered, or like...
A little bit of both, I think. And again, I think for me it was like that I went through this process and like pursued all the avenues I could pursue at the time that were available to me was really important. And so in this one way, it felt a little bit like, I don't want to say closure because there's nothing has ever really tied up and closed with that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like, oh, well, it's more like a box that got checked, like, oh, search for family, check.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and actually, over time, especially now, I feel like, and in being able to witness other people, my friends, and like in my adopted person community, navigate reunion, there are definitely times where I'm like, oh, you know what, it's not a bad thing that I'm not having to try to figure out how to have an international relationship with people I don't speak the language. We're culturally very different. And so sometimes I think I've had enough time now and I have enough perspective that I can see some of the, the silver lining or some of the positives about not having that complexity in my life.
Yeah.
And yet it's still something I yearn for. And especially now that I have kids, and this idea of like, trying to pass along or instill a sense of pride or continue traditions of the culture. I find myself wishing for that known connection more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of because you don't have a lot to give them on that.
Yeah, it's very weird. It's a very weird experience.
Yeah, and they're growing and they're coming up mixed now too.
Yeah.
Are your adoptive parents still alive?
They are. Yeah, they both live in Minnesota.
What did they think about your decision to go and find your birth parents?
I think on the surface they were both. My parents were very supportive. My siblings were pretty supportive. But I also I come from a family and in just like that Midwestern culture where talking about your actual feelings it's not a thing people do very often. Yeah. And so like kind of hearing about it roundabout, I think that I think my parents had some insecurities about it, and many people. I think it's unavoidable if you're talking about and living out adoption sort of like in the way that we were, like kind of like pretending that I was born to them and just like raising me like I was born to them. So you miss this big piece of, this kid and who they are and how they got there. And when they're bringing that part up, then they don't really have any way to talk about it or understand like, where those feelings might be coming from or stuff like that. And so I do remember having a conversation with my mom who said, like, my sister was really feeling insecure about my search because my sister was afraid I would find another sister and like her better. And so, but that wasn't anything my family was bringing to me. It was just things I was hearing about it. But for the most part, I think they were, and my parents have always been, have always stated that they would support me if I wanted to find my Korean family. And I know my mom, especially when I was younger, was really interested in meeting my Korean mom.
So, I don't know what I was going with that. All right. I kind of lost my train of thought there. Well, I think what I was just going to say is, we talked about them. They had good intentions and they thought they were helping out this poor, little Korean baby but they also, I don't think, well, you would probably be able to speak to this. You being in touch with your Korean heritage was probably not at the front of their minds when they decided to make this adoption.
Right. Yeah.
This adoption, and you did go to the camp later on, but I just can't imagine that the cultural aspect was high on the priority. That they just wanted to raise a healthy kid and get him out of a bad situation. Mm-hmm. So so you brought up your kids. That was going to be kind of my last little bit of this. So, white dad, Korean mom, mixed, and then as we've covered, you weren't able to make contact with your biological family. So what is that like now? And so what are you doing different to expose them or get them involved in their Korean heritage compared to what you experienced? Is it a higher priority for you to have that be a part of their lives?
Yeah, definitely. And I think not only like the Korean part, but also the adopted part, because I think that's like to explain how we're living out the Korean part. The adopted part has to be a part of it so that I have some context for it. But definitely have always talked to my kids about, you have a family in Korea, and I don't know who they are, and but very much like, for me, reassuring them that they are Korean and that is part of their heritage, and they have every right to participate in that however they want to, and that they can pursue that and identify in any way that they want to. And I think that way more than my parents ever did. And so where I struggle is because I don't have I have this severance between my Korean culture and myself. Sometimes it feels really hard for celebrating holidays and things to feel really authentic, because I'm just like, there are sometimes where I'm literally just like looking it on the internet. And so it's not like I'm making my grandma's recipe or, my family did this for generations, or this is the place we return to every year. And so that part is hard because for me, it feels very inauthentic. But I think something that really helped me with that challenge is Adoption Mosaic has started to put together.
Okay, why don't you go see what it is? We're almost done. That's going to happen every episode. I promise you. Kate is going to walk in here and ask for something. Okay, sorry.
Adoption Mosaic put together this community of children whose one or both parents are adopted. And one of the women that I know, her mom is Korean adoptee and her dad is white. And she described her experience of her mom being Korean. She's like, everything my mom did was Korean because I just saw my mom as Korean. And so that really, really helped me be like, oh yeah, I am living out one segment of Korean diasporic identity. There are actually many Koreans who live overseas, who've immigrated to other places, who also live outside of Korea. But I am living one element of that, and it doesn't make me less Korean. Maybe it makes me less culturally competent, but it doesn't make me or my kids less Korean. And so that was I always try to hold that idea in my mind when I'm feeling like I'm just like another jerk looking at these things on the internet, especially now that this Korean stuff is so popular.
Yeah, that's so true though. And that's, I went through that same exact thing. And it was actually my dad who said, well, you're Indian. You're just as Indian as they are because you're Indian.
Yeah.
That's it. So you grew up in the city and they grew up on the res. There's the difference.
Yeah.
So that's so true. And that's so nice and refreshing to hear, because I think I even now need to be reminded of that. Because I still feel like I'm faking the funk sometimes.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why this exists, because I want people to be able to tell stories, and I want people that feel like you can be in between two cultures, but you're also witnessing and living both, which can actually be an advantage.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah.
That is really powerful.
And I think that this idea of there's only one way to be, I really believe that is absolutely a result of white supremacy. Because viewing others through the white supremacist gaze tells you there's certain ways that you be Black, that you be Indian, that you be Asian. But really, once you're, but that's just part of colonialism and white supremacy.
Yeah.
And because they reduce those ideas and lenses, reduce people to certain things without making room for all the complexity and nuance and just differences of experience, growing up on the res or not, or growing up in Korea or not. but it definitely is hard to feel. I definitely still struggle like with feeling really confident about it. Although I see my daughter like really confidently identifying as Asian, as Korean, and that is really helpful.
That's killer.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll ask this one first. Just kind of what you think. What do you think about international and transracial adoption? Are you pro? Are you anti? Somewhere in between? And yeah, just what are your thoughts on it?
I would say my stance would be, especially for internet. Well, I think for both. Like I think they do exist. So, and I don't think either one of them are not going to exist. I think they're definitely changing a lot, especially international adoption. The number of international adoptions has gone down so much over time. But I think that they are flawed systems that cannot be reformed. And so if they were to occur, it would have to be something radically different than what's going on now, or that the systems or institutions that we're supporting and developing are ones in which family separation doesn't happen, or it's working to prevent family separation. So adoption as we know it wouldn't look the same way. And I think if if I had my druthers, it just wouldn't exist at all because families would stay together.
Right.
Somehow, or you'd stay in your community of origin, or there's just something that doesn't take you from one group of people and put you with strangers from another group of people. Because I think that in my experience, personally, but also through my professional work and hearing the stories of so many international and interracial adoptees, is that it doesn't work very well. It's just not. It's not a well thought out system, and it certainly isn't thought out. It isn't a system that is designed for the lifelong duration of an adopted person. Right. It's definitely designed for placement, going from one family to another. But after that, it's not designed for very much success after that. Right. And so I just think that there are probably better things and programs or ideas that we could put our time and money into that focus on keeping people together rather than encouraging stranger adoption.
Yeah. My mom didn't come right out and say it when she was on, because I did ask her if she would do anything different, and she just said, more or less that now there's more programs available and there's more classes and there's more things you could do. And I do think she was saying she probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if and from women who have stories I've heard of their relinquishment is that a lot of times it's really just about resources. I think what happens is like the adoption industrial complex makes relinquishment about wanting or not wanting, but it's really about having or not having. If you're a single young woman and your family doesn't support you through this pregnancy, then it's about like childcare and supplies and emotional support. But it's not about not wanting or wanting someone, but then somehow in the process of adoption, it gets warped into whether she wanted you or not. And that really wasn't the question. It's about what resources did she have to make her feel like she could do that.
Right. Totally, yeah. She was 18 and a waitress, and I think what also makes the story extra sticky is my older brother Bill and my next oldest sister Jennifer have the same father. So from Bill's perspective, he was like, well, wait a minute. She's good and I'm not. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And my mom has explained to him however many times, like, that's not the case, it's this and that, but I don't know how you're gonna change someone's mind about that without significant work.
And I would say, because it's not a mind thing, it's this deep emotional seed that gets planted.
Right.
And it's so hard to shake. I mean, I would say, like, my number one challenge as an adopted person now is how to unchain myself from this idea, or untangle myself from the plant of that seed of that I wasn't wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like such a deep emotional wound that words, I think words just, it helps, but it's just something it's something I don't think you ever really recover from.
Yeah. I don't know how you could. All right.
I would also say, for the transracial, interracial adoption, is that, yes, I believe people's intentions are good. Yes, I believe people are willing to put in resources and time to learn about race and racism. And I don't think that a majority of transracial families, especially, I would say this, I don't think a majority of white parents are accurately equipped to raise people of color. And I think it's a little bit of hubris and arrogance to think that you as white people can raise kids of color.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like this systemic belief that has been built into the system to think, oh yeah, I, as a member of a group who has oppressed and, harmed these people, like people of color, oh, I can totally raise somebody to be proud, be a proud and well-adjusted person of color. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but I will also say that a lot of transracially adopted people don't become well-adjusted people of color until after they leave their white families.
Yeah, the white savior thing.
Yeah, totally.
All right, I've got two more questions for you. So what would you tell your younger self now? Like, let's say the kid growing up in Minnesota. Is there anything you wish you knew then?
Yeah, I think that multiple truths can be true at the same time, and something could be true and not true at the same time. That there's this kind of multiplicity that you have to be able to understand and navigate as an adopted person of color in a majority white environment, and that it's hard. And also, figuring out how to navigate this experience never ends. Mm-hmm. And that, you really do need, and especially because I grew up in Minnesota, and as a young person, I lived in Minneapolis, and Minnesota does have a really large and rich community of adopted people. But when I was living there, I didn't know about it. I was still, what some people say, in the fog, or I hadn't entered adoptee consciousness yet. And so I feel like I missed this opportunity to connect with people at a time where having connections to other adoptive people would have been really helpful for me.
Yeah.
And so just really encouraging myself to find my people sooner, because it would be a lot easier to get through some of these transitions in my life if I had known them.
Yeah, not just. Would that include other Korean people, or are you speaking?
Yeah, adopted people and Korean people, and kind of try to figure out how to manage that imposter syndrome, because the truth is, if I am not in reunion with my family, and even if I wasn't living with them, I wasn't raised by them, no matter what, I still have to figure out what being Korean is to me and how I want to pass that on to my kids.
Right.
And the only person who's going to do that is me.
Right. Yeah, that's Man, anytime I look back on little Gino, I'm just like, oh God, there's a definite,
Right.
oh, I wish I could help you, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but then I probably wouldn't be who I am now. So who knows? But we didn't really talk about what you do now, as far as, because you were with Adoption Mosaic and you moved on to other things. Is that correct? So
Yeah.
So I guess my last question is, what's next for you? What do you have on the horizon? Where's your adopting?
Well, I'm looking for a job.
Okay.
But I have but I'm not sure what I want to do. I mean, I really loved working in the adoption community, and I think it's a place where I really feel like I have found my voice. And so I really want to continue being a part of that as a mentor, just like talking with people about adoption. I am a co-facilitator for a transracial parenting course that's hosted by Adoption Mosaic. It starts in September, so if anybody knows any transracial adoptive parents who want some real and practical advice about how to raise their kid transracial adoptees, please sign up. It's a great course and it's a great community to be connected to. And one of the things I have been thinking about is writing a book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So not the book I ever thought I was gonna write, but I have been, like, I have an outline. I've just been really thinking about pieces of that a lot.
Yeah.
So.
I'm gonna do the forward on that.
Yeah.
I love this is what I found doing this show. How I didn't anticipate how much overlap there was going to be between adoption and growing up mixed, or things of that nature. There's a lot of people, and this is like, my therapist said this to me the other day when I told her I was considering doing this again. And I said, there's a billion podcasts. Do we really need another podcast in the world? And she said, yeah, there's probably a billion podcasts, but there's only one you.
Yeah.
And if you had the success with it before, you're saying something that people want or need to hear, whatever that is. And that was enough to kind of keep me going, to keep going with the idea of starting it over. I don't want it to, I don't want to assign any kind of importance to it, but it's important to me because it makes me feel good. And, I hope people listen to it and get something out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't always want them to be heavy, but I think everybody has a story, and they may never have been asked about it.
Right. And I think too, it's like the experience of being adopted and being mixed, I think, is like, those are connections that I think some people just need to be. It's helpful to be aware of those and just have that understanding. And I don't know, it's fun just to see the overlap, because I think there's a lot of overlap, especially as a person raised by white people. What is the result of that?
Yeah.
All
right, man. This was really good.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me.
I'm not even sure. We may have been in the same space once or twice, maybe at Oxford. So this is really the first time me and her have ever sat and talked.
Yeah.
And it felt like it went really well.
I think so. Yeah. So, I really enjoyed it.
Me too. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for being the first guest. And
yay! I feel so honored.
And, I'm so glad, because I was just like, we'll just do Zoom, it'll be fine. And then it was your idea to come here.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right. And then as it got closer, I was like, well, I guess I better start setting some stuff up so we're not just sitting on my couch, But
that would have been fine too.
It would have been. So thank you so much. I'm so glad you came on. This was really, really cool, and your stories, and I hope you write that book.
Okay, thank you.
I do think that would be a good read and would impact a lot of people. So
thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
See you next time. Stay tuned for some more good stuff. This is Native as I Can Be. I'm Gino Ray. This is Shelise. Bye.
Bye.